all the women and they took all the possessions. So the coveting of the one man led to the death of many others. Second story. Coveting leads to power. You got to fast forward from Jacob's time to one of his younger sons, Joseph. Remember the story, the fact that Joseph ends up going into Egypt. That's when the Jewish people go to Egypt. They're in Egypt for 400 years. Within this 400-year time span, we're told in Exodus 1 that a Pharaoh took control who did not remember Joseph. We know today what was going on. When the Pharaoh that was in control when Joseph was there, it was not a homegrown Pharaoh. It was like a Canadian coming down and taking over America. And when America finally put Canada out is when we started voting in our own president again. That's what was going on. When Joseph was there, and when he was brought to be the second in command, it was outside people who were ruling Egypt. When the Egyptians finally start to rule themselves, the Pharaoh comes up and he gains power, and he is an Egyptian Pharaoh, and he says, here are all these Jewish Hebrew people, and they have all this wealth, they have all this prime land, we need to take it away from them. Pharaoh's coveting of the land, coveting of the power, led to the enslavery of the Hebrew people in Egypt. Does anything good come from coveting? No, it does not. Third example. Fast forward about 800 years. The Jewish people have gone through their exodus. They've been in the land of Israel. They've had no king. They've had the prophets and the judges. King Saul is their first king. Then David becomes king. King David. Jewish people look up to David as being the greatest king. We as Christians look up to David as being a wonderful king, a man of God. But we tend to forget the fact that there's this whole story of David already having 8 to 10 wives. 8 to 10 wives, but he's still not satisfied. He's coveting. What's part of coveting? Not being satisfied. He's coveting, and he sees Bathsheba. She's bathing. He's staying back in Jerusalem where all his army is off to war. He should have been off to war. He says, I'm going to stay home this time. I'm taking a vacation time, sabbatical time. Stays home, sees Bathsheba, inquires who she is, finds out who she is. We all learned this last year, if you remember who Bathsheba was. She was the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Uriah was one of David's 30 fighting men, one of David's close men. Bathsheba was the daughter to David's counselor. The granddaughter to David's counselor. So there are connections that are going on here like crazy. But David, his lust is not satisfied. His coveting is not satisfied. He takes Bathsheba, has an affair with her, sends her back home, calls Uriah back from the war, tries to get Uriah drunk so he'll go to sleep with his wife. He does not go to sleep with his wife. He goes back to fight, and David sends a letter back with Uriah to the leader, the general in charge of the army, that says, put Uriah in the front of the battle so that he can be killed. And if you remember the story, we really go back to the number one example, because not only was Uriah killed, but many other soldiers were killed in the process of getting rid of one man covering David's sin. Does anything good come out of coveting? No, it doesn't. We think it's going to satisfy that discontent within our lives, but the only thing that comes from it is destruction and death. Fast forward about another 125 years. Now we're about 750 BC. We have Jezebel, King Ahab, Queen Jezebel, King Ahab. I find it interesting. I've never seen a lady's name Jezebel. I don't know. Anybody here ever see somebody's name? Nobody's named here Jezebel, are they? You've seen it before? Okay, it's very rare. Because for most of us, when we hear the name Jezebel, we think of a bad person. Well, Queen Jezebel was an awful person. But King Ahab was the king. He had everything he should have wanted. Naboth, a man, had a vineyard, a beautiful vineyard. Ahab wanted that vineyard to turn it into, of all things, a vegetable garden. I mean, it's a vineyard. They have the grapes. They're making the wine. And he wants to turn it into a vegetable garden. He must not have been a good Dutchman of meat and potatoes. You know? Maybe put some cows on it, but vegetables. Anyway, so King Ahab says pretty bad, huh, Greg? King Ahab says he wants this vineyard. But he can't get it. So Jezebel writes letters to the leaders in the town. Says, have a big feast. Call Naboth up and celebrate who Naboth is. And then have a couple of scoundrels come and say that Naboth cursed God. He cursed the king. And then take Naboth out and stone him. Well, that's what happened. And then Ahab took possession of the vineyard. So the coveting for the vineyard led to deception and murder of an innocent man. Does that sound familiar at all? We're in the season of Lent right now. It started Wednesday with Ash Wednesday. Does that sound familiar with somebody being set up as an innocent man, having people come and do false testimony against him, and then have him killed? The covet of power and jealousy of the Jewish leaders led to Jesus Christ on the cross. You see, the reality is, when we covet, we not only hurt ourselves, we hurt that relationship with another person. We hurt that, we break that relationship with God. The fact that God says, I am a jealous God, I want to be with you. I have given you all that you need for your own contentment. And we said, no. You can't do it, God. I can do it myself. When God says you shall not covet, and we do it, we are in effect saying to God, we know better. We know what will satisfy us and what will make us happy. You don't know that, God. But then we end up with the whole question, with the whole issue. What do we do about it? What do we do about the covenant within our lives? And it's interesting because if you look at all 10 commandments, you know, sometimes we can look at the 10th one of thou shalt not covet and think, oh, that's really not a very big deal. The reality is, with all the commandments, it starts in some respects with coveting. You should not commit adultery. Why? Well, because you're coveting. You should not steal. What does that have to deal with? Well, you want somebody else's goods. You follow with that? I mean, the last commandment flows into all of the other 9 commandments. But there's good news. There's good news that we are called to have a change in our lives. Just want to give you some ideas of this change. Some ideas that I've been working on in my own life for many years, and I'm still there every day trying to look at some of these thoughts and ideas because I need the change in my own heart and life. The first one comes to the fact that we need a change of heart. With the reality of the change of thought is the reality of the knowledge that we can't do it ourselves. We tend to think we can pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, that we can change our own heart. We can't. I think Alcoholics Anonymous has done just wonderful, awesome things. Some of you may know it was started by Christian individuals. And it's very faith-based. Christian faith-based, Alcoholics Anonymous. First couple of steps. We admit that we are powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. We need to admit that our coveting within our life, though you may sit back and say, I really don't do it too much, the reality is we all do. That the coveting within our lives, the lusting within our life, is unmanageable by ourselves. That we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity and made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. Admitted to God and to ourselves and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. The first step, I really truly believe, with breaking the addiction of coveting is to accept a change of heart. Not that we bring ourselves, but the change of heart that we go to God and we say, God, we need help with it. Ezekiel 36 says, I will give a new heart to you. I will put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. That is an awesome word picture. to take away the heart of stone. So you're in a marriage relationship and you are just struggling with your spouse. Your heart has turned into stone.